up ahead. Affirmative 612.
Welcome to another edition of the Wealthy Pilots Podcast. Scott, I'm back with you. Good to be back here in the saddle with you, my friend. I hope you're doing well and looking forward to. We're going to really kind of do a kind of a series theme for the next couple episodes. Really, kind of contingency planning for pilots, what to do when things don't go so well. And I guess maybe kind of the Spirit Airlines thing is kind of kicking us off with this conversation. How to survive maybe some tough times without some self-sabotage. Not that they self-sabotage themselves, but just in general, right? Making good decisions because you never know when things like that are going to happen. So,
yeah, I mean, more so, I think it's, when we enter some challenging times in our career, how do we not make some mistakes and self-sabotage our current situation and make it worse?
Yeah, great point.
We can't control the adversity that comes at us sometimes. Right. I mean, if you're familiar with this E plus R equals O, right? There's events that happen. We can't control the events. There's an R, which is our response to that event. And then there's an O, which is the outcome that comes from that. Yeah. So this is like a common, leadership theme, but, we talk about a lot of with the kids too, like, hey, events happen all the time. How we respond is what dictates the outcome. Yeah. And so, and you can't, emotionally over focus on the event itself either, because you can't control the event.
No, sir.
We can control our response. So,
true.
yeah, I wanted to just talk a little bit about, specifically for some of our Spirit folks, just kind of what they're going through and how to, some key things to avoid. And then I think one of the other key takeaways is planning for contingencies in advance is going to help you, survive and thrive through them. Yeah. The other aspect of it, right? If you wait until an emergency to get a plan, it's always going to go a little bit worse and be a little bit more challenging. So that's
we can certainly, you can apply this to anybody, not just the Spirit folks, right? 100%. So like the five biggest mistakes pilots make during career, stress, right? So let's talk about some of those.
Yeah. So, I mean, like the first one I would say is when they get out of, or into, I should say, when they get into a turbulent time like this, one of the number one mistakes that I would recommend people try to avoid at all costs is going out and trying to live off of their 401k. That's probably the most common thing that I see. A lot of times this is not the case right now, but a lot of times this career turbulence can happen for people when the market and the economy are in a depressed state as well.
And it's a confusing market too, right? Like we see all these crazy things happening. We got the gas prices, all this stuff. And yet, the market, like I was just out for 2 weeks and I come back and the market was up like 1,000 points from when I left. I'm like, what in the world happened? Right.
Yeah. Definitely crazy times with the market. And, I think when I look at like what the number one mistake is, right? I mean, it's that like, hey, I got all this money in my 401k. I'm just going to live off of that. Yeah. And, there are things you can do from a hardship standpoint to reduce and eliminate some of the penalties that come with some of the distributions out of that. So you want to make sure that you're, documenting things correctly if you do have to pull out of the 401k. But also, this is one of the things where it's still a taxable event. So you're paying taxes on it. If you're not following things correctly, you're getting a penalty on it. And many times if the market and the economy are doing bad as well, which again, that's not the case in this scenario, but many times it is when our pilots are facing some adversity. Many times it's when the broader economy is facing adversity as well. And that's when they're starting to sell things, their securities at a loss or at a depressed value to fund their current lifestyle. And so, to me, that many times I think is the easy button. Now, that said, I think you still have liquidity needs that you need to factor in. So it's like, okay, well, if I'm not going to pull from my 401k, what should I pull from? First off, there's you got different programs out there to help with mortgages or unemployment or whatever the case is. But I think, if you have some equity in your home, like looking at a home equity loan as something to help bridge the gap. Okay. Again, this is assuming you have like no cash, right? I had no plan for this. I was living paycheck to paycheck, and my paycheck's gone, and I'm feeling here the pressure, right?
Sure, yeah.
And so, naturally, that would be one aspect that you want to go to for sure. But to me, if I take a step back, that's like one key thing to avoid. Right. Avoid going out and just spending the 401k down, especially when, you're not understanding the long-term impacts of that. When again, a lot of these guys are going to get priority hires at some of the other airlines. And so hopefully is not going to be a big gap to fill, but it could be for some of them. And
I would imagine an identity crisis forms sometimes when something like this happens too, right? Like a long furlough. If you are off for a while, the airline went under, you start kind of like doubting, you start getting scared. And that's when panic sets in. You make rash decisions, obviously. Absolutely.
And again, one of the other downsides with this is, you got senior guys over at Spirit, and, that seniority doesn't necessarily come over. And
good point.
That's going to impact pay and all that. I mean, and obviously getting into a different airline and getting a job is, a priority, but you just really, really feel for people that have been there for a long time, even a short time, and hopes of a good career and all that. And, it's just an absolute bummer, but the negative impact to like so many thousands of people. But at the same token, all that's over now. And what do we do to pick up the pieces and move forward? So,
Scott, let me ask you, some of the things that people tend to do when they lose a job or they're on just furlough or, a short-term thing or whatever, is they stop like long-term investing plans thinking, due to the fear, right? It's like, well, I'm not contributing because to the 401k because the job's not there. But the other things I was doing outside that, I'm going to stop all that too. It just kind of feels like, depending on your age, that could be another kind of layer of bad idea, right? Because you're also killing your compounding and growth for the future. But it's easy to understand, right? Because you panic and you don't want to do it anymore.
Yeah, I mean, if you're in a really good cash position, let's say, and hey, you got line of sight to a new job coming up and the pay is going to be comparable, that might be a situation that you're able to maybe still be contributing to some of your, investment accounts or whatever the case is. But I mean, the priority is absolutely trying to maintain liquidity and, service your debt and make sure that you're bridging the gap until you get to your next job. But if you take a step back, to me, I think a lot of the pressure in that situation, it's headed off early by having a good plan. And so this is where we say, like, hey, you want to have about a 6-month emergency fund is a good practice. And when we say a 6-month emergency fund, we're not saying 6 months over invested in NVIDIA or whatever. No, I got 6 months of like cash or money market in a bank account that's liquid. I can get to in the next 24 to 48 hours. And yes, I know that potentially $100,000 is sitting out there not earning a bunch of money. That's okay. It's not the purpose of that money. That money is there for when crap hits the fan. So many times people will build up a smaller emergency fund, but then as their income potentially even triples over years, they don't triple their emergency fund. So their income grows, their lifestyle grows, and their emergency fund never grows. And so we want to be able to, definitely increase the amount of we want to be able to increase the amount of liquidity that we have as our lifestyle grows, as our income grows. And so that's one key aspect of planning, right? So if you're not in crisis right now, take a look at your liquid cash. I mean, if it's half of your base pay, or really I should say half of 6 months of your bills, because many people, work a lot of overtime to fund their lifestyle. Yeah. So 6 months of your bills in cash, and I mean, treat that as zero.
That's a good point you made too just a second ago, is lifestyle, right? Be careful during these times not to let that get out of control. Maybe even look at ways to rein that in if you feel like it is going to be a longer furlough or a longer in between jobs, right? So it's easy to build up the toys, right?
I mean, it's that. I mean, and honestly, even if you would look at, some of the other airlines that are kind of chugging along and doing really, really well right now, it's easy to say these good times will last forever.
Oh, yeah.
I mean, it's psychologically very normal for us to say these good times will last forever. But, there's an element like, hey, when the harvest is strong, you might want to build up the stores in the barn a little bit too. And I absolutely believe this should be one of those seasons. So you don't want to base your lifestyle around a bunch of extra premium time that you're getting and premium trips that you're getting. Because those are not necessarily guaranteed. I mean, obviously, the higher seniority you are, the more likely you are to be able to manage that. But this is like a peak for a lot of airlines. So it's not necessarily good to bring that lifestyle all the way up to, hey, as long as everything goes perfect in my scheduling,
can't do that.
I can fund this lifestyle.
Yeah,
you got to give yourself some margin. Give yourself some margin in the budget where, if you have some sort of medical issue and you need to, slow down for a little bit, or you're off and just getting your disability or base pay or whatever, that while you're recovering from an injury, those are things that you want to have some margin that they don't create stress. And again, it's different if, let's say I'm making an extra $100,000 a year through some of my premium work. Okay, you can fund that towards paying off some debt, a little bit towards lifestyle, and then a little bit towards investing for the future, right? Mm-hmm. And then, hey, let's say I get that's margin right there. Extra debt payment, extra investment, a little extra lifestyle. Okay, let's say I get into an incident, I hurt my shoulder, or I'm hurt at a hockey game or something like that, and I have to be off of work for a while. So for those of you who don't know, I had a different co-host, Ben, the last couple of weeks, who did a great job. But Mark was out from an injury at a hockey game for a few weeks, and so
you never see it coming, literally.
Yes, and when those things happen, you want to be able to just be able to know, like, hey, while I'm physically healing and taking care of what I need to take care of with my family and my body,
right,
I'm not worried about the finances, because if I cut down on extra debt payments or cut back on some extra investment for 6-8 months, whatever it needs to be, that's not that big a deal. But if I got mortgage payments to make and boat payments to make and car payments to make, and then now I'm not working the overtime I was going to work, I mean, you're
not working at all or whatever. Yeah. I mean, and it adds up, right? I mean, it's easy to see how to build that, how that stress can certainly mount. We all know it, right? We've all experienced it at different times in life. What's some good practices? Like, I know we talk about having, like, as pilots, they having a checklist, right? So a lot of times we talk about having that financial checklist.
Yeah. So the key things I would look at here. So first off, when we think about, you're like back is against the wall and you're out of work, let's say in this Spirit Airlines scenario,
right?
Trying to avoid going into additional debt if possible is definitely a priority. Trying to avoid dipping into your 401k. If I need some extra liquidity, potentially borrowing against the home is one of the most efficient ways to do it. And then from a planning standpoint, again, having an emergency fund is key to just bridging some of those times to buy yourself time and relieve some of that pressure. Again, the event happens. If we have a good plan, we can respond in a much less stressful way to get a better outcome. So that's one. For two, for the some of the more, I'll say, career contingency planning, it's yes, still having the emergency fund, but you hear that school of thought of, hey, build the first officer lifestyle while I have the captain pay. So there's that aspect of it.
Right.
I would definitely say you don't want your lifestyle to exceed what your base pay is.
Okay.
And when I say lifestyle, I mean, what it takes to, fulfill my family obligations for vacations and service my debt. That's kind of how I view my lifestyle. So,
okay.
I don't want to have such a big house that if I can't get overtime pay, I can't take my family on vacation, and those kind of things. So, so just kind of running those numbers every year as contracts get renegotiated. I mean, look at the base pay and leave yourself some margin. I mean, that just leaving yourself some margin is really, really important. And then the other thing is doing a little bit of scenario planning, right? Okay, if something goes wrong, and pilots are doing this all the time, right? If something goes wrong, what are we going to do? So if I am out of work, or if I am going to have low income for a couple of years because I'm off work, that might be a great time to do some Roth conversions because I'm in lower tax brackets. So there's things like that we can do that even if I'm making a little bit less money, I can still move the financial needle. I mean, some of our Spirit folks right now, I mean, if they're going to be off work for a little bit, it might be a really good time to do some Roth conversions. So again, you want to look at the plan and make sure you're not like trying to do some savvy tax moves while we're missing mortgage payments, right? But there's opportunity when chaos comes in, and we want to make sure we exploit those opportunities to our benefit best that we can. So.
Well, and at the end of the day, right, if you need a plan, you need a checklist, you need some help, Scott's got the Wealthy Pilot Toolkit, which is a great way to kind of get going with some things, especially if you're going through a tough time right now. So request that toolkit and build your own personal contingency checklist before you actually need it. That's usually the helpful thing. Go to retireairlines.com. That's retireairlines.com to get started. We'll have links in the show descriptions below. Molly will come back on here in a second and tell you about the checklist as well. But you can also just call him at 419-314-4139. Numbers on the screen if you're watching on YouTube as well. Just hit that thumbs up, notification bell, all that good stuff so you catch new episodes when they come out here on YouTube and, of course, on Apple or Spotify, whatever app you're using. Check the descriptions. But, Scott, we're going to continue on kind of with, kind of this overarching theme for the next couple episodes. So, hopefully folks can, subscribe and check in for some more good content.
Looking forward to it, man. Thanks a lot.
I always appreciate your time. We'll see you next time here on the Wealthy Pilots Podcast with Scott Osborn. We'll catch you a little bit later on.
Hey everyone, real quick, if you haven't grabbed Scott's Financial Flight Control Toolkit yet, now is the time. This is packed with tons of helpful resources and tools like this, Scott's book, The Dichotomy of Wealth, which is a pilot's guide to maximizing wealth and cash flow in retirement. You also get access to some great guides like this one, Advice Matters, which breaks down 4 key ways a good financial advisor can help you boost your returns over time. And guides like this one on the pitfalls of emotions when it comes to investing, and this one on the HCM byline investment strategy, and more. So if you'd like your very own Financial Flight Control Toolkit, just click the link in today's show description, and Scott and the team will be happy to get one sent your way at absolutely no cost to you.
Information is for illustrative purposes only and does not constitute tax, investment, or legal advice. Always consult with a qualified investment, legal, or tax professional before taking any action.